My father changed the locks on the house I had paid for and told me I had never belonged there. I was standing on the porch of the home where I had grown up, the two-story colonial in Charlotte that I had poured 6 years of my life into saving. The house where I had taken my first steps, celebrated my birthdays, dreamed about my future. The house I had sacrificed everything to keep in our family. And now, my father was standing in the doorway with the locksmith, watching as the locks were changed, a smug smile on his face that I had never seen before. "What's going on?" I asked, my voice trembling. "Dad, why is he changing the locks?" "Because this is my house," my father said, his voice cold and flat. "And I decide who has keys." "Your house?" "I've been paying the mortgage for 6 years. I worked 3 jobs to keep this place." "You paid bills. That's what children do when they live with their parents. It doesn't make the house yours." "I don't understand. You said if I paid off the mortgage, we would add my name to the deed. You promised." "I never promised anything." He crossed his arms, leaning against the doorframe like we were discussing something trivial, like he hadn't just destroyed my entire life. "Your name isn't on anything, Vivian. Not the deed, not the title, not a single document that matters. As far as the law is concerned, you're just a tenant who overstayed her welcome." I felt the ground shifting beneath my feet. "Dad, I gave you everything, every paycheck for 6 years. I didn't take vacations, I didn't buy new clothes, I worked myself to exhaustion so we wouldn't lose this house. And I appreciate that, but the mortgage is paid off now. The house is free and clear, and I've decided it's time for you to move on." "Move on? I have nowhere to go. I have nothing saved. I gave it all to you." "That sounds like a personal problem." He shrugged. "You should have been smarter about protecting yourself. But you were always too trusting. Vivian, too naive, just like your grandfather." The mention of my grandfather, Papa Okafor, who had died 3 years ago, who had been the only person in my family who truly loved me, made something crack inside my chest. "Don't talk about Papa. I'll talk about whoever I want. This is my house, and you—" He pointed at me, his finger jabbing the air. "Need to leave, now, before I call the police and have you removed." I looked past him, into the house I had killed myself to save. And there, in the living room window, I saw my mother. She was watching, not moving to help, not objecting to what my father was doing, just watching. And then she waved. A small, dismissive wave, like she was saying goodbye to a stranger, like she was erasing me from her life. I stood on the sidewalk with nothing, no money, no home, no family, 6 years of sacrifice, and I had been thrown away like garbage the moment I was no longer useful. I don't know how long I stood there. Minutes? Hours? Time had lost meaning. The sun was starting to set, casting long shadows across the lawn I had mowed every weekend, the garden I had planted and tended, the driveway I had shoveled through countless winters. All of it had been for nothing. I had been used, manipulated, betrayed by the people who were supposed to love me most. And then I heard footsteps. Slow, deliberate footsteps approaching from down the street. I turned and saw an elderly man walking toward me. He was tall and thin, with silver hair and a face that seemed familiar, though I couldn't place it immediately. He stopped a few feet away from me, studying my face with an expression I couldn't read. "Vivian Okafor," he said. It wasn't a question. "Yes?" "My name is Benjamin Harrison. I was your grandfather's attorney." I blinked, confused. "Papa's attorney? But Papa died 3 years ago." "I know when he died. I was at the funeral." He paused. "I've been watching this house for 3 years, waiting for this exact moment." "Watching? I don't understand." "Your grandfather was a very wise man, Vivian. He knew things, he saw things, and before he died, he made certain arrangements to protect you." "Protect me from what?" Benjamin Harrison looked at the house behind me, at my father standing in the doorway, at my mother watching from the window. Then he looked back at me, and he said 7 words that changed everything. "Your grandfather left you the house. My name is Vivian Okafor. I am 29 years old. I was born in Charlotte, North Carolina, the only child of David and Margaret Okafor, though calling them my parents feels like a lie now. My grandfather, Emmanuel Okafor, Papa, as I called him, came to America from Nigeria in 1962 with nothing but a suitcase and a dream. He worked 3 jobs himself, saved every penny, and eventually bought a small house in a modest neighborhood. Over the decades, he built a successful construction business, invested wisely, and accumulated wealth that my father had always envied and resented. When Papa retired, he gave my parents money to buy their dream home, the colonial where I grew up, the house I had just been thrown out of. But he didn't give them the house itself. He loaned them the down payment, and he never forgot that loan. Let me tell you about the 6 years that led to this moment on the sidewalk. It started when I was 23, fresh out of college with a degree in accounting and dreams of building a career. My father called me with the news. They were going to lose the house. The business had failed. They had missed mortgage payments. Foreclosure was imminent. "We need your help, Vivian," he said, his voice cracking with what I thought was genuine desperation. "If we lose this house, we'll have nothing. Your mother's health will suffer. We'll end up on the streets." I didn't hesitate. I moved back home to save money on rent. I got a second job, then a third. I worked mornings at an accounting firm, afternoons at a retail store, and weekends at a restaurant. 80 hours a week, sometimes more. Every paycheck went directly to my parents. They said it was easier to manage the bills that way. They said they would keep track of everything. They promised that once the mortgage was paid off, they would add my name to the deed. "You're saving our family," my mother said, hugging me after I handed over my first paycheck. "We couldn't do this without you." I believed her. I believed them both. For 6 years, I believed. The signs were there if I had been willing to see them. The way my father never showed me any bank statements or mortgage documents. The way my mother deflected whenever I asked about our progress. The way they both lived comfortably, new furniture, vacations, nice restaurants, while I wore the same clothes year after year and ate rice and beans to save money. "The mortgage company requires minimum payments," my father explained when I asked why we weren't paying it down faster. "We can't just throw money at it." I believed that too. I was young. I was trusting. I was desperate to help the people who had raised me, and they used every one of those qualities against me. The first real warning came from my grandfather. This was 2 years before he died, 4 years into my sacrifice. Papa had invited me to lunch, just the 2 of us, at his favorite restaurant. "Vivian," he said, his voice serious, "I need to ask you something. Are your parents treating you well?" "Of course, Papa. Why do you ask?" "Because I hear things, and I see things, and what I'm hearing and seeing worries me." "I don't understand." He leaned forward, his dark eyes intense. "Your father has always been jealous. Jealous of what I built. Jealous that I gave your mother's family money before I gave him any. Jealous that you take after me instead of him." "Papa, that's not—" "Let me finish. I gave them money for that house because your mother asked, but I never trusted your father with it. I never trusted him with anything. So, why did you give it to them?" "Because I loved your mother, and because I thought having a stable home would be good for you." He shook his head. "I was wrong. I should have bought the house myself. I should have kept control." "Papa, what are you trying to tell me?" He was quiet for a long moment. "I'm trying to tell you to protect yourself. Get your name on that deed. Get proof of every dollar you've given them. Don't trust your father's promises. He's my father. I have to trust him. No, Vivian, you have to be smart, and trusting a man like your father, that's not smart, that's naive." I didn't listen. I should have listened. Papa died a year later, suddenly, from a stroke. One moment he was there, the next he was gone. The funeral was large. Papa had been beloved in the community, known for his generosity, his wisdom, his unfailing kindness to everyone he met. My father gave the eulogy. It was beautiful, moving, full of stories about Papa's courage, his sacrifice, his love for family. I cried through the whole thing, believing every word. I didn't know then that my father had hated Papa for decades, that he resented every success, every dollar, every moment of praise that Papa received. I didn't know that Papa knew this too, and I didn't know that Papa had planned for it. Benjamin Harrison stood before me on that sidewalk, holding a manila envelope. "Your grandfather anticipated this moment," he said. "He knew what your father would do. He knew you would sacrifice everything to help your family, and he knew they would betray you the moment you became inconvenient. But the house is in my father's name. How could Papa leave it to me? Let me explain." Benjamin opened the envelope and pulled out a stack of documents. "When your grandfather gave your parents money for the down payment on this house, it wasn't a gift, it was a loan." "A loan?" "Yes, secured by the property itself. Your grandfather held a lien on this house, a legal claim that superseded your parents' ownership." "I never knew that." "Your parents knew. Your father signed the documents himself, but he assumed your grandfather would forgive the debt eventually, or that the lien would disappear after your grandfather's death. But it didn't?" "No, because your grandfather transferred the lien to a trust 3 years ago, shortly after your conversation with him at the restaurant, and he named you as the sole beneficiary of that trust." I stared at him, trying to process what he was telling me. "The lien on this house is now yours, Vivian. Your parents owe you $847,000, the original loan amount plus interest accrued over 23 years. And if they can't pay—" He paused. "If they can't pay, you have the right to foreclose, to take possession of the property, to become the legal owner of the house your father just threw you out of." I felt dizzy. "But they just paid off the mortgage. They have no money." "Exactly. They have no money. They spent your contributions paying off the bank, not knowing that they still owed your grandfather's trust, not knowing that they would owe you. So, the house is effectively yours. As soon as you file the paperwork, your father will have 30 days to pay the debt in full. If he can't, and he can't, you can initiate foreclosure proceedings and take possession of the property." I looked back at the house. My father was still standing in the doorway, watching this conversation with growing unease. "He can see us," I said. "I know." I wanted him to see. I wanted him to watch as his entire scheme collapsed. "Why?" Benjamin's expression softened. "Because your grandfather loved you, Vivienne, more than anyone else in the world. And he spent the last year of his life making sure that no one, not even your own parents, could ever hurt you the way he knew they would try to." I felt tears forming. He knew this would happen. He suspected, he hoped, he was wrong. But he prepared for the worst, just in case. Benjamin put a hand on my shoulder. He asked me to wait, to watch, to only reveal this if your father actually followed through on what your grandfather feared. And if he hadn't? If my parents had kept their promises? Then you never would have known about any of this. The trust would have quietly dissolved, the lien would have been released, and everyone would have gone on with their lives. But they didn't keep their promises. No, they didn't. I took the envelope from Benjamin's hands. "What do I do now?" "Now you have a choice. You can forgive the debt, release the lien, and walk away. Or you can enforce your rights and take what's legally yours." I looked at the documents. I looked at the house. I looked at my father, who was now walking toward us, his face twisted with confusion and the first hints of fear, and I made my choice. "Let's go to your office," I said to Benjamin. "I want to file the paperwork today." Father reached us just as Benjamin was turning to leave. "What's going on here?" he demanded. "Who are you? What are you telling my daughter?" "I'm Benjamin Harrison. I was Emmanuel Okafor's attorney." My father's face went pale. "Emmanuel's been dead for 3 years. Whatever business you had with him is over." "Not quite." Benjamin smiled, a cold, precise smile. "Your father-in-law left some unfinished business, a loan specifically, one that you signed for 23 years ago. That loan was forgiven. Emmanuel told Margaret. He told her nothing of the sort. And even if he had, verbal promises don't override signed legal documents." Benjamin held up a copy of the original loan agreement. "Your signature, Mr. Okafor, right there on the bottom, acknowledging a loan of $127,000, secured by this property, to be repaid with interest upon demand or upon the sale of the home. My father snatched the document, scanning it frantically. This doesn't matter. Emmanuel is dead. The estate is settled. The lien was transferred to a trust before Emmanuel's death, a trust that Vivian now controls. I watched my father's face as understanding dawned. "No," he whispered. "No, that's not possible." "It's not only possible, it's already done. As of right now, your daughter owns a claim on this property worth $847,000. You have 30 days to pay it in full. If you can't, she can foreclose. We just paid off the mortgage. We don't have $847,000. Then I suggest you start looking for alternative housing." Benjamin turned to me. "Vivienne, shall we?" I looked at my father one last time. The man who had raised me, who had taught me to ride a bicycle, who had walked me to school on my first day of kindergarten, who had told me he loved me countless times over 29 years, the man who had just thrown me away like garbage. "You used me," I said, my voice steady despite the storm inside me. "You let me work myself to exhaustion for 6 years. You took every dollar I earned. You watched me sacrifice my health, my social life, my entire 20s, and you were planning to throw me away the whole time. Vivian, you don't understand. I understand perfectly. You're a thief, a liar, a man who exploited his own daughter's love to get what he wanted. I'm your father. You're a stranger who shared my DNA." I turned and walked toward Benjamin's car. "Enjoy your 30 days. The legal process took 4 months. My father tried everything to stop it. He hired lawyers. He filed motions. He claimed the documents were forged, that Papa had been mentally incompetent, that I had manipulated my dying grandfather into signing away his estate. None of it worked. Benjamin Harrison had spent 50 years as an attorney, and he had anticipated every possible challenge. The documents were bulletproof. The chain of custody was perfect. The trust was ironclad. My father couldn't pay the debt. He had spent everything paying off the mortgage and maintaining their lifestyle. The foreclosure proceeded exactly as Benjamin had predicted. On the day the property was officially transferred to me, I stood on the porch of my childhood home and watched my parents load their belongings into a rental truck. My mother hadn't spoken to me in 4 months. She had chosen my father's side without hesitation, without even asking to hear my version of events. Now she walked past me without making eye contact, carrying boxes to the truck like I was a stranger. My father stopped in front of me. "Are you happy now?" he asked, his voice bitter. "You've destroyed this family." "You destroyed this family when you decided to use me as a cash machine," I replied. "I just stopped letting you. You're just like Emmanuel, cold, calculating, thinking you're better than everyone else. Papa was the only person in this family who ever actually loved me, so yes, I'll take that as a compliment. You'll regret this. One day, when you're old and alone, you'll realize what you threw away." "I didn't throw anything away, Dad. You threw me away. I just caught myself before I hit the ground." He had nothing to say to that. He walked to the truck, got in the passenger seat, and drove away without looking back. My mother waved from the window of the truck, the same dismissive wave she had given me from the living room window 4 months ago. I didn't wave back. The house felt different when I walked inside for the first time as its owner. The furniture was gone. My parents had taken everything that wasn't nailed down. The walls were bare, marked with faded rectangles where pictures had hung. The rooms echoed with emptiness. But it was mine. For the first time in my life, something was truly, legally, unquestionably mine. I walked through every room, touching the walls, remembering. The kitchen where my mother had taught me to cook, or tried to, before she gave up on me. The living room where we had opened Christmas presents. My old bedroom, now just an empty space with a closet. And then I went to the basement. Papa's workshop was still there. My parents had left it untouched, probably because none of the old tools and materials were worth anything to them. But they were everything to me. This was where Papa had taught me to build things, where he had shown me how to measure twice and cut once, how to sand wood until it was smooth as silk, how to see the potential in raw materials. Everything worthwhile takes time, he used to say. Patience and persistence, that's what separates the builders from the dreamers. I sat on his old workbench and cried, not from sadness, from gratitude. He had known, he had seen what my parents would do, and he had spent his final years making sure I would be protected. "Thank you, Papa," I whispered to the empty room. "Thank you for seeing me. Thank you for believing in me. Thank you for being my real family." The tears fell, but they were cleansing, healing. By the time they stopped, I knew what I was going to do. I was going to make this house into something new, something that honored Papa's memory, something that proved I was worthy of his love. The renovation took 2 years. I used every skill Papa had taught me, plus everything I could learn from books, videos, and classes. I gutted the kitchen and rebuilt it myself. I refinished the hardwood floors. I painted every room in colors that reflected who I was now, not who my parents had wanted me to be. I turned the basement workshop into a proper woodworking studio, preserving Papa's tools and adding my own. And I turned the garage into a small office for the accounting practice I started, specializing in helping first-generation immigrant business owners manage their finances and protect themselves from exactly the kind of exploitation I had experienced. The business grew slowly at first, then faster as word spread through Charlotte's Nigerian-American community. Emmanuel Okafor's granddaughter, people would say. She's, just like him, honest, hardworking, someone you can trust. Being compared to Papa never stopped making me cry. 3 years after I took possession of the house, my mother showed up unannounced. I was in the front yard, planting flowers, when a car pulled into the driveway. I didn't recognize it at first. It was older, more modest than anything my parents had driven when they lived here. Then the door opened, and my mother stepped out. She looked older, thinner. The carefully maintained appearance she had always cultivated was gone, replaced by something more worn, more defeated. Vivian. Mother. We stood there, looking at each other across the lawn she had once tended, the garden she had once cared for. "I wanted to talk to you," she said. "I assumed you wouldn't come here otherwise. Can we go inside?" I considered refusing. Considered making her stand in the yard, feeling the discomfort of being a guest at the home she had once owned. But that wasn't who I wanted to be. "Come in." We sat in the living room, a room that looked nothing like it had when she lived here. New furniture, new paint, new everything. She looked around, clearly disoriented. "It's different." "It's mine. I made it mine." "Your grandfather would have liked it." "I know." Silence stretched between us. "I came to apologize," she finally said. "Did you?" "Yes. What your father did, what we did, it was wrong. I've known that for a long time. But you didn't say anything. You waved at me from the window. You spent 4 months refusing to speak to me. I was afraid your father was all I had. If I went against him, I would have lost everything. You lost everything anyway." She nodded, her eyes filling with tears. "He left me. 6 months ago, he met someone else, a woman half his age with a small inheritance. He took what little money we had left and disappeared. I wasn't surprised. This was exactly who my father was." "I'm sorry that happened to you." "Are you?" "Yes, despite everything. I don't want you to suffer. I just wanted you to stop making me suffer. I know. I know that now." She wiped her eyes. "I should have protected you. When you were working 3 jobs, killing yourself for us, I should have made your father treat you fairly. I should have insisted your name go on the deed. I should have been your mother. Why didn't you? Because I was weak. Because I had spent my whole marriage deferring to your father. Because I had forgotten how to stand up for anyone, including myself. That's not an excuse. No, it's an explanation. And it's all I have." She reached into her purse and pulled out a small box. This was my mother's, my grandmother's before that, I should have given it to you years ago, but your father always convinced me to wait. He wanted to save it for, I don't know what he wanted. He always had reasons." She opened the box. Inside was a ring, a simple gold band with a small diamond. Nothing fancy, but clearly old, clearly precious. "It's been in our family for 4 generations," she said. "The women in our family have always passed it to their daughters. I want you to have it." I looked at the ring. I looked at my mother. "I can't pretend the last 3 years didn't happen," I said. "I can't pretend you didn't choose him over me." "I know, and I can't promise to forgive you. Not yet, maybe not ever. I understand. But I can try. I can try to build something new between us, something honest, something real. Not the relationship we had before, where I gave everything and you took without seeing. Something different. That's more than I deserve." "Yes, it is." I took the ring from the box and slipped it onto my finger. It fit perfectly. "Thank you, Mother, for the ring. And for finally telling the truth. Thank you for listening, for letting me in the door. That's all I'm offering right now, a door. What we build through it is up to both of us." She nodded, tears streaming down her face. "I'll earn it. I'll show you that I can be different." "We'll see." We sat together in silence for a long time. Not comfortable, not warm, but present. And that was enough for now. My grandmother used to say that family isn't blood, it's choice. You don't get to choose who gives birth to you. You don't get to choose the people who raise you, the dynamics of the household you grow up in, the patterns of love and dysfunction that shape your earliest years. But you do get to choose who you become, and you get to choose who you call family as an adult. I chose Papa. I chose the values he taught me. I chose the love he showed me. I chose to become the person he always believed I could be, and I chose to build a life that would make him proud. The house I live in now, the house I saved, lost, and reclaimed, is full of reminders of that choice. Papa's tools in the basement, his photograph in the living room, his wisdom in my heart. Every day, I wake up in a home that represents everything he stood for: hard work, integrity, and the belief that family should lift you up, not tear you down. Some days, I think about my father. I wonder where he is, what he's doing, whether he ever thinks about what he lost. But those days are getting fewer. He's not my family anymore. He's just someone I used to know. Someone who taught me, through his cruelty, what I never want to become. If this story resonates with you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Drop a comment telling me where you're watching from and whether you've ever had to reclaim something that was taken from you. Like and subscribe for more stories about survival, justice, and the legacy of people who truly loved us. This was never your home. Your name isn't on anything. That's what my father said after I spent 6 years paying his mortgage. 3 jobs, 80-hour weeks, every dollar I earned. I gave it all to keep his house. And the day the mortgage was cleared, he changed the locks and told me to leave. My mother waved from the window. I stood on the sidewalk with nothing, but my grandfather's attorney had been watching. He walked up to me and said 7 words. "Your grandfather left you the house." Papa knew. He knew what my father would do. So he made arrangements. The down payment my parents used? It was a loan from Papa, a loan secured by the property, a loan that was never paid back, a loan that Papa transferred to a trust that belonged to me. My father owed me $847,000. He couldn't pay. So I took the house I had sacrificed 6 years of my life to save, the house my father tried to steal from me. It's mine now, legally, officially, forever. This was never your home. You were right, Dad. It wasn't my home when you lived here, but it's my home now. And your name isn't on anything.